Hello everyone, welcome to Musing Moms episode 4, and we are with Jessie Foo from Kin and Kid Psychological Service, and we are going to talk about postpartum depression and everything that relates to this topic. Right now we want to start with asking Jessie in particular on the feeling that women feel actually when it comes to postpartum depression, the difference between whether it's baby blues, or how do you differentiate baby blues and postpartum depression?
Baby blues usually would just last for a couple of days after your baby is born, and it usually consists of feeling a little bit teary, you feel a bit low mood, you are a little bit overwhelmed with what is going on. But when it comes to postpartum depression, it's somewhat more long term, and the experience is much more intense as well. So the person may feel that they feel guilty for not being a good mom. They feel really anxious and worried about their child all the time. So, for example, you may wake up a couple of times at night just to check on whether your baby is still breathing. And you may feel low energy, you may feel as if you feel really numb, you don't feel the excitement about your baby as compared to what people might have told you about having a newborn.
So how long, you said baby blues was a couple of days. If postpartum depression, I think I've heard you mention before in one of your talks that it can happen not instantly, but throughout the days after you give birth.
Yes,
So,
you're
and
right.
when you say in terms of like how long, like does it, before it becomes a trigger? Yeah.
Okay. It will need to last at least for 2 weeks
Okay.
for us to call it a postpartum depression, and it can take place anytime between the first couple of weeks after your baby is born, up to the first year
Okay.
of your baby. So
Wow.
you may not experience it immediately, but somehow you may start or gradually develop the postpartum depression later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there like any symptoms specifically that we ourselves or women themselves can notice, or relatives can notice to pinpoint like, hey, maybe you need to get some help or something like that?
I think if you notice the new mother, her emotions are much more different from how she used to be. So, for example, she used to be a very happy-go-lucky person, and now she's like, she gets irritated very easily. She gets overwhelmed. She gets snappy very easily, or she feels. She gets argumentative
Okay.
with the people around
Defensive
her.
lah, like
Defensive.
yeah.
Or when you try to help her, she'll get upset, things like that.
Okay.
If you notice there's a lot of changes emotionally, you may want to ask her whether you want to get it checked.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the best sort of reaction? I mean, already she's feeling defensive and she's agitated. How do you actually approach the issue with, I'm just thinking in the sense of like a family member or friends, when you come over and you notice this difference, what is the best reaction you should do, or what is the right approach to be able to help your friend or your relative who's going through postpartum depression?
I think it's to explain to her that, a lot of times women may go through a lot of changes emotionally after their baby is born. And I noticed that you are somewhat a little bit different. How you're handling things now is a bit different from how it used to be. So I'm a little bit concerned about whether you are experiencing something more than what a new mother is experiencing. Okay. So let's just talk to someone about it, and then to check it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it just rings in me the fact that a lot of women are embarrassed, I think, to express that feeling, especially when it comes to like having negative feelings when you just had a baby. I think there's this misconception that you're supposed to be all happy, cheerful, but there are a majority of women who find it very difficult to handle the situation. How do you think, the society and how do you think women can sort of break this taboo that you have to be this sunshine bright person just after you have a baby and accept the fact that you can have issues and things. What do you think we can do to
Well, first of all, motherhood it is a very challenging period of time, especially when your lifestyle is just turned upside down because of a newborn. That's one thing, and another thing is when when a woman deliver a baby, there's a lot of hormonal changes within the person. So it's only natural that a lot of us would actually experience a lot of emotional changes during this period of time. Okay, yeah, as a matter of fact, 7 out of 10 of women would experience baby blues after they deliver
Right.
baby, and 1 or 2 out of 10 would eventually develop postpartum depression.
right?
So the rate of or the risk of developing postpartum depression is actually quite high.
Right.
So to help us to be aware of it, that it can happen to anyone, even if you didn't experience any kind of emotional difficulties before that, you were emotionally really healthy, but somehow it can still happen. So we as people around the new mothers, okay, we want to help them to see the fact that it can happen to anyone, and it's not shameful to ask
Right.
for help.
Yeah, I think the key is to let women realize, or we ourselves realize, that it's not wrong asking for help. I think a lot of women, one thing is that asking for help is always a challenge, and that needs to sort of be gone with, I think, because asking for help is always a key to better yourself. So I wanted to just quickly ask you, is there a difference when it is a working mom and a stay-at-home mom when it comes to postpartum depression? Because some working moms who had to leave their jobs to care for the baby, does that sort of trigger more sort of like down feeling compared to, or is there no comparison whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're a career mom? Is there a difference or is there no difference?
It's equally likely to happen to both groups of women. The challenges will be a little bit different, I would say. For working moms, the challenge is to balance between family life and balancing their work. For this group of people, because they still get a lot of social contact, they may have the kind of social support that they need, but at the same time, the stress from work, it can also add on to the stress at home. On the other hand, although when a mom is a stay-home mom, they may not have the stress from work, but they may also have lesser social support if they have less social contact with the outside world. If they spend most of their time with their baby alone at home, then it can be equally challenging for them socially, because they don't have that kind of social support to help them, to support them through
Right.
this process.
So it's a pro-con thing either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jessie, you're a mom yourself. Did you experience any sort of baby blues or postpartum, or did you have first-hand experience in sort of changes in your emotion when you were going through after you gave birth, and how did you handle it yourself? I mean, you're a professional, but you're still a woman, so I'm
You're right.
curious to know.
You're right. I guess for me, because of my professional work, then I became a little bit more aware of my emotional changes. But it doesn't mean that I don't experience those
Yeah, I
changes.
can imagine.
Because it's equally challenging and stressful for a first-time mom like myself, despite knowing the possibility of the stress and what to expect, knowing that I will be overwhelmed, and still, when I'm overwhelmed, I still feel the emotional
Yeah.
intensity. And it was a very difficult time, I would say, especially during the first 3 months of my baby's life. It was challenging when it's just myself and my husband at home. And I still remember every single day I was just waiting for my husband to come back so that he can take over for a while so that I get some rest for myself. Even if it's just half an hour or take a good hot shower, it was better than not having a break from the baby at all. Yeah.
So you were conscious enough to like make sure that you gave yourself those breaks.
I tried my very best, and I'm very glad that to have a very supportive spouse really helped with this process.
Right.
I don't think I'll be able to cope better if I don't have a supportive husband.
Right. I remember at the Tolly Joy event that we met, the Tolly Joy Baby Day event, you mentioned that men also go through postpartum depression. I think this is something totally new for a lot of people. Can you just explain a little bit on how do men experience postpartum depression? I mean, we're not sure, for women, we can always say like, oh, there's the hormonal imbalance and things, but how about the men? How is it for them?
Somehow interestingly, men would also go through some hormonal changes when their wives deliver the baby. Slightly different from women. Women's hormonal changes started since their pregnancy, okay? And women started to feel like a mom when they are pregnant with a baby.
Right.
But usually men would only feel that they are becoming a dad when they physically see the baby is in their hands. So the emotional change is a bit different. And men, like women, they can also feel really overwhelmed by the changes or the way that they need to handle a newborn. And you may notice that if the men, they started to spend more time at work, or they may cope with drinking or gambling just because what is going on at home, it tells you that the person may be going through postpartum depression himself.
Okay. How many men do you see, come in and express this feeling and wives being understanding? I'm just thinking the fact that the woman is going through postpartum depression, the husband can be going through postpartum depression. How do the couples with newborns especially help each other to not, blow up, I guess? Yeah.
Okay. It will be really tricky if both parties, the husband and wife.
Does it usually happen like that? Have you seen something like that where both parties, or usually it's either or?
It can happen, both parties. But of course, in my work, I have not seen a father coming in because they think that they have developed depression after the wife's delivery. Sometimes it's harder for them to tell that they are depressed because men's depression, the expression of their depression is a bit different. Okay. They may have more of the irritable mood rather than sadness.
Okay.
Yeah. So they may find themselves being much more snappy at people. They get angry really easily. They lose their patience. Right. And they don't see that as related to my wife's delivery. Okay. So it's harder for them to make that link.
Identify as well.
Yes. Yeah. So they may not seek for help because they think that my changes in emotions is related to my wife's delivery.
So women out there, moms, if you find your husband acting a little bit odd, maybe it's time to have a talk with him that maybe he may be going through some sort of postpartum depression. When it comes to the baby, for moms who's going through postpartum depression, how does the caring for the baby happen, the safety of the baby? We've heard many scary cases of recent days. The case where the mother who abused her twins because she was angry at her husband, it was surely a sign of postpartum depression. We may not be, I'm not a clinical psychologist, but looking at what was shared on the media, it really showed that she was going through some sort of postpartum depression. What about the babies? How does it affect the babies? How do we take care of the babies in that sense? And what can moms do to ensure that the babies are still safe?
If the postpartum depression became really severe, it can turn into postpartum psychosis. So the person may start to have delusion or hallucinations, and they may start to form beliefs about wanting to hurt their baby or even hurting themselves. And that is a more severe form of postpartum depression. When a mother is going through postpartum depression, a lot of times it affects how the mom relates to the child. Okay, you may notice that the affection may be slightly lesser as compared to a mom who is emotionally healthy.
Yeah.
Okay, you may engage less,
Yeah.
you may smile less, or you may play less,
Okay.
or massage or talk less with your baby. And for children who grew up in an environment like this, okay, you may notice that the child would have some delays in their development as well.
Okay.
In the long term.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the impact
Okay.
of postpartum depression on the baby. And in terms of how mom can ensure the safety of the baby, I guess for the mom to be a little bit more aware of their emotions, it's really the first
Yeah.
line of defense.
I think aware and accept.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can be aware, but you can't accept that you feel that way. So you just sort of put it under the carpet. I think that's another thing that, it's okay to have, sadness or things like that. I think women always forget that to not just to be aware, but to accept that you can feel sad about having a baby and it's okay. And if you need the help, go get some help, whether it's asking your mother-in-law, your mother to help you out, or seeing a doctor or a psychologist, perhaps.
You're right.
Last question. You say that it can affect the baby's development. Does it have long-term effects on a child if they are put through this postpartum depression by either the mom or the dad? Does it leave a sort of long-term effect on the child?
Okay. It really depends on how long the postpartum depression lasts.
Okay.
If let's say it lasted for a few years, that it may continue on to affect the child for a
Can
long
it
time.
last for a few years?
It can. If let's say the depression is not treated,
Right.
so the person may continue on to struggle with depression even after the child has grown up.
Right.
Then it can be really difficult because you may not be as involved with your child as compared to a mom without such difficulties. And a child who grew up in an environment where they don't feel securely attachment with their mom, it can become a little bit more difficult for them emotionally when they're growing up as well. So yes, there might be some long-term impact on the child if let's say this postpartum depression is untreated.
Yeah.
And it continue on to affect the mom or the dad for a really long time, it can have a negative impact on the child.
Okay.
Long.
But having said that as well, if postpartum depression in the parents or in the mom is treated, there is a chance that the child is, although affected, but the child can get out of this?
Yes, because children are actually very resilient.
Okay.
So if you provide them with a more nurturing and supportive environment, you can actually help them to develop resilience,
Okay.
emotional resilience. And you may notice that after a few years, they become stronger and stronger as well.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So there's hope.
Yes,
So moms,
definitely.
don't worry. Get the help you need. Thank you, Jessie, for sitting with us. Thank you for sharing. I think this is a really important topic that a lot of Asian moms especially are not very aware of. So I do hope you ladies out there, if you're listening, if you feel that you need some help, maybe you can come and see Jessie if you need, someone to talk to. But always don't feel like you're alone. There's so many women out there who suffer from postpartum depression. I don't want to say that it's normalized, but there's always a way to get help, and I hope you get help, and take care, and see you again in the next episode. Thank you.